Despite constant non-stop air raids, which have counted up to almost 300,000 since the start of the war against Yemen in 2015, there were no new targets that the Saudi-led coalition of aggression could further add to its military targets. Hence, the Saudi-led coalition began targeting civilian facilities, specifically the communications sector in Yemen. In the first week of February, the spokesman of the Saudi-led coalition of aggression, Turki Al-Maliki, announced the intention to target civilian sites used in what he referred to as military purposes. Soon enough, Riyadh launched a series of attacks on the Yemeni capital, targeting areas previously bombed with hundreds of raids, such as Al-Daylami base, Al-Haffa areas, Attan, and At-Ta'an. As the results of the bombing were nihilistic, the coalition announced its intention to carry out air operations in Sana'a, which would include civilian sites that the coalition deemed are being used militarily. At dawn on Monday, the 14th of February, civil state institutions were included in the list of its new targets, calling on civilians to evacuate ministries and public institutions immediately. As usual, the Yemeni communications sector was amongst the first targets of the new aggression, although it is protected under international law as civilian facilities. Yemen's Ministry of Communications in Sana'a then announced that the Public Communications Corporation in Al-Jarf neighborhood had been subjected to a series of raids, two of which led to the complete destruction of the headquarters of the National Company for International Communications, Teleyemen. The ministry confirmed that the Yemeni telecommunications sector is a service sector that has nothing to do with the conflict, reiterating its warning that this attack might result in the complete interruption of telecommunications and internet services for citizens in all governorates. Despite the destruction that the raids had on the Teleyemen company, which led to a complete interruption of international communications between Yemen and the rest of the world, air raids resumed the evening on the same day. The targets this time were the company's devices related to the satellite internet, in addition to other devices and equipment, in an attempt to cut off internet services from all regions of Yemen. According to Lebanese daily Al-Akhbar, the government of outgoing President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi had received Emirati promises to operate the international gateway for communications from the city of Aden just days after the coalition targeted the internet gateway in Hodeidah governorate last month with a series of raids that disrupted services. The internet in Yemen was completely out for 5 days before the General Corporation for International Communications was able to restore services and repair the damage. This places what the coalition is doing within the framework of the systematic destruction of the infrastructure of the Yemeni state, which Riyadh and Abu Dhabi began more than 7 years ago. Welcome to the Mideastream. I'm Marwa Osman. Last week, the spokesman for the Saudi-led coalition, Turki Al-Maliki, announced the intention to target civilian sites under the false pretext of being used for military purposes. Riyadh hastened to escalate its crimes against Yemen by launching a series of attacks on the Yemeni capital, targeting areas previously bombed with hundreds of raids. Saudi jets began pounding civil state institutions as part of the list of its new targets, calling on civilians to evacuate ministries and public institutions immediately. Now, this time, the Yemeni communications sector was the first target of the new aggression, although it is protected under international law as a civilian facility. The Ministry of Communications in Sana'a announced that the Public Communications Corporation had been subjected to a series of raids, two of which led to the complete destruction of the headquarters of the National Company for International Communications, Teleyemen. To discuss this issue with us from Sana'a is engineer Nizar Al-Moaid, head of the IT department at Sabafone Yemen. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Nizar. Now, the Yemeni communications sector was the first target of the new aggression by the Saudi-led coalition, although it is protected, as we said, by international law because it's considered as a civilian facility and a civilian institution. But it was completely destroyed. It was not only targeted, it was completely destroyed by the raid. And we're talking about the National Company for International Communications, Teleyemen, in the capital, Sana'a. From your position there as a manager of IT at Sabafone Yemen, are there any telecommunication services left for the Yemeni public to use?
Targeting Teleyemen headquarters was not the first strike for telecom sector in Yemen. This sector was targeted since day one, from 2015 till today, either by hitting space stations or backbones links among cities. Aggression has successfully made physical siege by blocking airports and seaports. And now they are trying to make cyber siege by targeting telecom institutions in Yemen. If this continues, even the basic services like voice, short messages will even be suspended. Aggression media once declared clearly that the aim of such raid is to isolate communication among cities in Yemen. This will add up crimes over the current crimes. For this aggression, Teleyemen is the main international gateway of Yemen. When the aggression targeted Teleyemen headquarters in Hodeidah this January, Yemen went offline. A whole country went offline for 5 days. You can imagine how many businesses, services, transactions, correspondences, platforms were suspended, and figure out the total loss for a country with this fragile economy due to this war. Not only this, the late strike for Teleyemen headquarters in Sana'a led to a suspension of international roaming and international SMSs for all operators in Yemen, because Teleyemen is the gateway. It was ironic that this strike happened after one day of a demonstration from a group of communication staff. They were in front of UN headquarters asking UN to neutralize communication. And that was the reply of the aggression.
Well, Mr. Nizar, despite its realization that the air raids it is pounding on Yemen, which have approached up until now 300,000 since the start of the war in 2015 on the people of Yemen, they are no longer feasible. Saudi Arabia already knows this, and the Saudi-led coalition has recently intensified its targeting of Yemeni civilian facilities, especially the communication sector, as you just told us, once in Hodeidah, several times in Sana'a, in other governorates of Yemen as well. In what appears to be a prelude to seizing the sector and maybe transferring it elsewhere from the capital towards Aden through a Yemeni front represented by the ousted government of Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi. What is your take on that approach?
They have tried to seize this sector before. I remember in 2019, and they announced it in all medias, that Teleyemen headquarters was moved to Aden. Same thing happened to Sabafun in 2020, but they failed to apply that practically for many reasons. First one, although they have invested a lot, they were not equipped enough, and they don't have the technical readiness, they don't have the manpower to do so. Second thing, the population density is higher in the north, in the areas that are ruled by Sana'a government. So the potentials, the traffic, the revenue is in the north, not in the south, besides many other reasons. They have also a very bad experience apart from telecom. When they seized the central bank of Yemen and moved it to Aden, what are the outcomes now? Yemeni real value against USD in north areas is almost double or more than double its value there in the south, in the areas that are ruled by the so-called Hadi government. This is due to bad management in bad sector, and I'm sure that the same thing goes for communication sector. And this is the result of the absence of leadership. They are not there. They are controlling the government there by a remote control from Saudi Arabia, from hotels there. Mm-hmm. That is being dominated by external forces, by Saudi-led coalition. They are controlling them. They are dominating them. On the other side, the Sana'a leadership, Sana'a government, are fully independently ruling the country. They are putting the higher priority for the Yemeni citizen interest. So I think these late incentive strikes, raids, to communication sector are the result of their failure to move the sector to Aden.
Well, Mr. Nizar, in case this aggression continues as is, and we see more war crimes against civilian facilities like that of the telecommunication sector in Yemen, how do you think Sana'a will respond in case this aggression continues to target such civilian institutions?
coalitions or aggression, they don't need excuses to bomb institutions or even civilians' facilities or households. They are practicing this, ma'am, from 2015, every single day. However, they are trying to create state of antipathy against Ansar Allah when they declaring that Ansar Allah are using those institutions to launch drones. Okay, and I'm sure that you have seen a video that was revealed by the media of the Ansar Allah and the Sana'a government. Mm-hmm. It's showing clearly that they were not using any institutions. You can only see mountains, valleys to launch those drones. So it's only excuse to put pressure on Sana'a governorate inside the community of Yemen and outside, mm-hmm. and they will fail. Sana'a will not stay still. They will target again and again.
Well, in hopes that the war on Yemen ends soon for everyone and all sorts of blockades are lifted, I want to thank you dearly and deeply, Engineer Nizar Al-Moaid, head of the IT department at Sabafon Yemen, for being with us. You are so kind to give us your time and talk about this horrific war crime. Now, please stay tuned because next we will be talking about Israel's agents in Lebanese media. Well, it was remarkable what was revealed by the Lebanese Al-Manar TV channel, quoting security sources following the investigations with one of the agents of the Israeli entity who were recently arrested in terms of exploiting the profession of journalism to distort the facts with lies and deception. The main aim of that rogue journalist was to distort the image of Hezbollah and insinuate internal Lebanese divisions in order to undermine the resistance, while insisting on linking all the suffering of the Lebanese people to the alleged Iranian occupation of Lebanon. Al-Manar TV channel had published a report that included what security sources had revealed about the details of the confessions of the journalist accused of collaborating with Israel, Muhammad Shu'aib, who was arrested at the end of last month. More in this following report.
For years, under the banner of freedom of expression, the Zionists were able to infiltrate newsrooms to dictate what their broadcasters say, editorial offices to formulate events in their own language, and news websites to narrate the analysis that suits them. To achieve all this, they had to recruit direct spies who assumed these tasks in return for financial amounts paid per the article they publish. These deals, which began to reveal tangible evidence with the arrest of the agent journalist Muhammad Shu'aib, were not hidden. The Zionist imprint was evident in every word written falsely, in every slander that was propagated, and in every provocation and abuse that was launched from specific press platforms and targeted the resistance and its environment. When leaked documents about the arrest of the recent spy networks were published in Lebanese media, it exposed the role of the Zionists in directly influencing the creation of slogans that target the resistance and incite the public against it. After Al-Akhbar newspaper published last week the news of the arrest of a journalist on charges of spying for Israel, the Lebanese public was able to recall the campaigns that were launched against the Lebanese resistance, which portrayed its environment as one that is always ready to accuse others of betrayal and treachery and that does not tolerate freedom of expression. Muhammad Shu'aib's name came out to the media. Leaks rolled and his confessions became public. His operative, Tom, asked him to write articles accusing Hezbollah of being behind the port explosion, articles targeting Hezbollah's Dr. Hamad Hassan during his tenure as health minister, and articles addressing issues related to Hezbollah's Qard al-Hassan Association in a provocative manner. The list of headlines he was asked to write about goes on, but we also discover that some articles were delivered to him well written and all ready to be published. Tom then asks him to prepare reports on political issues that are the subject of internal disagreement and division, and to write these issues in the interest of the Persian Gulf countries in a language hostile to Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and in terms that indicate that Lebanon is occupied by Iran. Shuaib was asked to publish on Al-Kalima Online, Lebanon 24 News website, and the Voice of Lebanon radio website, and he was paid for each article between $50 and $75 US. Shuaib was later asked to create a Lebanon Project group on Facebook to publish everything in favor of Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf states. He was earning $200 per month to operate this page. Sources indicated that this is only the tip of the iceberg of Shuaib's confessions about what the Zionist enemy requested of him, media and politics-wise, to incite the public opinion against Hezbollah on the one hand and stir up internal strife on the other. What was remarkable is that the agent journalist Muhammad Shuaib was praising the resistance on his Facebook page to cover up what he was doing.
Well, to discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Mr. Hamza Al-Khansa, journalist at Al-Akhbar newspaper. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Hamza. Now, Agent Muhammad Shuaib's operative, known as Tom, asked him to prepare reports on political issues that are the subject of internal disagreement and division, while writing these issues in the interest of the Persian Gulf countries in a language that is hostile to Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and in terms that indicate as if Lebanon is occupied by Iran. That brings to mind at least 5 other journalists in Lebanon who follow the same pattern here. Are we looking at a complete network of agent journalists, or is this just a coincidence?
First of all, I would like to thank you for having me on your show. There is no such thing as a coincidence in the world of intelligence and the world of recruitment, especially if we look in depth and analyze the content of the intense media discourse that has appeared in Lebanon in recent times. Indeed, over the past 3 or 4 years, this discourse has been working and pressing in one direction, which is continuous accusations against Hezbollah, in a way that these accusations and this media narrative has evolved towards talking about an Iranian occupation and whatnot. These media narratives and this intense media pressure through traditional and modern media, especially social media, needs a full network of collaborators, implementers, and agents. We regret to say that there are journalist colleagues who are agents of Israeli occupation, at least the announced ones and those arrested by the Lebanese security services who are known and work in this profession. But they are not the only ones in this line of treachery that is only logical. Flooding Lebanon with these false narratives and misleading stories that aim to besiege the resistance and its environment and demonize this environment with all its beliefs, ideas, culture, and even the simplest aspects of daily life, aiming at the great goal of destroying the environment, which leads to the destruction of the resistance. All of this needs an integrated network, as we mentioned before, that works on social media, traditional media, newspapers, magazines, and even in seminars and regular evenings in cafes and restaurants, in order to plant these ideas among the Lebanese public to create a public opinion that is hostile to the resistance and its project in Lebanon.
Well, Mr. Hamza, what was interesting is that according to the investigation by the Lebanese security services, Tom, the operator of Shuaib, not only gave him titles and political topics to talk about, but he also assigned him the names of the appropriate personalities that he should go and interview to put that interview in each article. And we're talking about political and journalistic figures from what is known as March 14. That raises a lot of questions concerning the level of coordination between the Zionist entity and the political foes of Hezbollah inside of Lebanon. How do you think the resistance will deal with such a phenomenon?
It's not the first time that the resistance has faced such attacks by recruiting Israeli agents in all sectors. In the past, There were agents in some political parties, in some productive sectors, in telecommunications companies, and in many other sectors. This is not the first time the resistance has faced such an issue, knowing that the resistance contributed to the arrest of a large number of Israeli agents inside Lebanon, as the resistance security was the main contributor to these arrests through its private security apparatus. With regard to how to react to such news, we are accustomed to the leadership of this resistance and the resistance in general to deal with these issues with a cool and calm mind, and it knows perfectly what is going on behind closed doors. The resistance has a very large data bank about political parties and certain personas, both internally and externally, that works to recruit agents and target the resistance in various fields, especially in the field of media. But the decision in the resistance today, with regard to its reaction to the recent arrests, is that the apparently normal context of events will remain, and there will be no tense or an emotional reaction to these pressures, but the series of exposing these agents to the public will continue, during which they will also expose the hostile narrative that the resistance, its environment, and its audience face. The agents were exposed and dismantled in front of public opinion, so that the same public opinion would know that all the narratives that come from such journalists, including the Iranian occupation and Hezbollah's control over the political, economic, and military decision in the country, and the other narratives that have worked to stereotype the general political atmosphere in Lebanon. One operations room is created, and many media professionals, activists, and influencers are responsible for marketing it, each in his own field of work. But there is a small remark about Muhammad Shuaib, the journalist who was arrested and whom your report mentioned at the beginning. Muhammad is one of the youngest agents, so to speak, and those who work in the superficial crust of this rugged system. There are more dangerous agents if we are talking specifically about agents in the media sector. There are those who run large media outlets and have relations with important political parties and officials in the state, and parties inside and outside the state. They are the ones who take direct responsibility for publishing and broadcasting these narratives, false, misleading, fabricated, and hostile to the resistance and its environment. Today, we see in many talk shows, people and guests talk about normalization with the Israeli enemy in a very natural way, as if they were dealing with any other internal issue, even trying to raise this issue as if it was a controversial issue, like the issue of electricity, water, and elections in Lebanon. There are several personalities in Lebanon, especially among those who are influential in the artistic field, such as actors and singers, where this category of people and professions is teeming with those who deal in stereotyping this narrative and broadcasting it in the Lebanese society. They propagate the logic and the subject of normalization from the gateway that the Arabs have established normal relations with the Israeli enemy. The Arab media is now dealing with the Israeli file as if it were a normal file.
يتناولون مناحي الحياة في فلسطين المحتلة
Well, it seems,
كبيرة.
Mr. Hamza, that we will be approaching parliamentary elections in Lebanon. I wanted to ask you about that, but we are out of time, unfortunately. But we will have more weeks to come. We will be talking about the influence or the possible influence of these traitors and agents of the Zionist entity, and how will that affect the elections in Lebanon. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Hamza Al-Khansa, journalist at Al-Akhbar newspaper, for joining us to talk about the agents of Israel in the Lebanese media. And thank you for watching. Please follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Twitter, which has actually removed Mideastream account because we are hurting them with the truth, but we will be always there. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you soon.